I remember taking a pregnancy test, and I remember thinking, I can't tell him yet. Is this what he wants? I just didn't know because he was chasing this dream in the NFL. I was like, I can't throw this on him as he's going for 3 of the most important, tryouts that he had. And so I remember I waited to tell him, and I have never been so terrified in my life.
Hey, can I talk to you about something? I wish you knew
how lonely menopause felt.
I wish you knew why it's so hard for men to share their feelings.
I wish you knew what it was like growing up in a low-income family.
I wish you knew how hard it was not having a college degree.
I wish you knew what it's like to be me.
Welcome back to Mind If We Talk, where you get to be a fly on the wall for mini therapy sessions and learn some mental health tips in the process. I'm your host, Sreela Roy-Greene, a licensed mental health counselor with over 19 years of experience. Today, we're talking about one of the most beautiful and quietly destabilizing transitions a couple can go through: becoming parents. Having a child changes everything: your schedule, your sleep, your sense of self, and often your relationship too. You and your partner suddenly have to make room for someone new, someone who needs constant care and attention, and yet we don't often talk about what a child can really do to a marriage. Those experiences tend to stay behind closed doors, but the couples who fare the best are not the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who find ways to stay connected through the struggle. Today, we're speaking with Shawn Johnson, the renowned American gymnast and Olympic gold medalist, and Andrew East, a former NFL athlete who's played for the Seattle Seahawks and Oakland Raiders. Shawn and Andrew have been married for 10 years and are parents to 3 children. But their journey into parenthood wasn't always straightforward. It began with an unplanned pregnancy, followed by a miscarriage, and later a difficult experience with postpartum depression that neither of them fully saw coming. The two were deeply candid and vulnerable in sharing their parenthood journey with me. Later in our episode, I'll sit down with BetterHelp licensed therapist Sonni Williams. We'll talk about what's really happening psychologically and emotionally when couples navigate pregnancy loss, postpartum, and the identity shift that comes with becoming parents. And we'll get into some practical tools you can use too. Let's get to talking. Thank you both again for joining us today. Shawn and Andrew, it's a real pleasure and honor to meet you both and have this opportunity to get to know you both. I want to start off by talking a little bit about both your families and your family dynamics growing up. How do you feel that influenced your perspective on marriage, children, building your own family?
I actually think that's one of the greatest gifts both of our families gave us. My parents got married when they were 16. They came from very, very troubled and very hard upbringings, and they were the escape from that for each other. They met when they were 12, and they had a hard marriage. They fought, and they had so many things to work through. They ended up having me when they were 32, and I'm the only child. But I never saw them quit on each other, ever. And it was the greatest gift I was ever given as a child, because even to today, we live on the same property. We see them every single day. They are some of my absolute best friends in life, which comes with its hardships as well.
Sure.
But in raising a family, seeing them day after day after day fight for each other, even though it wasn't always easy, I think gave me the gift in our relationship of saying, we're going to fight. It's going to be really hard. We're going to go through a lot of hard things that aren't pretty. But you know what? I'm never going to leave. I will be here forever.
Yeah. My parents were high school sweethearts. They met in high school, and then my mom was a cheerleader at Purdue. My dad was a football player at Purdue. And honestly, they displayed a pretty amazing love in our family. And up until my dad passed, which was a couple years ago, and still it's so, you could see in my mom this just deep love that she had. And I grew up the middle of 5 kids. And it's interesting, that word family dynamic, I think, is kind of packaged as a word. And it's just what's your relationship with your family? But what I have learned growing up is it is really dynamic with the families, and different things will happen, and you're pretty fixed with this group of people. And so, whether it's grief or a transition or some family drama, like you do dynamically move around in different kind of ways. Yeah. And then it's been fun to introduce Shawn into that as well.
I love it.
Coming from the only child world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is not unusual to hear like only child of many, coming together and then finding that like balance, right? I am going to pivot a bit. You were married in 2016, and later that year, Shawn, you found out that you were expecting. Can you share a little bit about how it was for you sharing that news with Andrew?
So we got married in April of 2016. I then, a couple months later, jumped on a 4 or 5 month performance tour where we weren't together. He was bouncing around the NFL. We were basically living separate lives for a full year.
Wow.
Come back in, I think it was actually in 2017, if I remember.
October 2017.
Yeah. And I remember taking a pregnancy test, and this was not in the conversations yet. And it was as we were running out the door, he was running out for 3 back-to-back tryouts in different places in the country. I was heading out for a press tour, and I remember thinking, I can't tell him yet because he was so ambitious and chasing this dream in the NFL. I was like, I can't throw this on him as he's going for 3 of the most important, tryouts that he had. And so I remember I waited to tell him a week. I flew to New York City. I retook all these tests just to make sure. And I have never been so terrified in my life because, again, we hadn't talked about it. That wasn't the thing. And I remember calling my best friend, who's a therapist, and she talked to me off the cliff of just like, understanding the situation. And a week goes by. I convince Andrew to come home early. He's gone through his 3 tryouts. Didn't want to tell him over the phone, but I'm sure you kind of already figured it out. And I remember when I walked in, just feeling so scared of, is this what he wants? Is this going to ruin his ambition? Is this going to, I just didn't know. I got to fulfill my dream at 16, which is crazy. And I know that's very abnormal and very, different timing. But every single person in my circle sacrificed their world to kind of help me see my dream through. And I felt like it was my job to do that for you. And so when I got pregnant, it scared me that I wasn't in some way being the best supporter. And I didn't know how to break that news to him. But you handled it beautifully.
You had clearly way more thoughts about that situation than I did.
As does any woman.
I was like, holy smokes, she's pregnant. Am I ready to be a dad? That was pretty much it.
I'd been sitting in my thoughts and spiraling for about a week. I was like, how is this going to happen?
We sat on the couch the whole night, though.
Yeah.
And we were laughing, crying, brainstorming, looking up pictures, and, trying to come up with names. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the most conflicting moments, and I think in anybody's life, is simultaneously joyful and scared to death.
The readiness doesn't come before the commitment. It's not a preface to it. The readiness comes as the result of the commitment. You're not ready to be a parent, right? We knew nothing. You don't know the bottle or the food.
Ever babysat before.
Yeah. But then you jump into the water and you figure it out.
I hear you 100% on that. And I think every parent listening is going to identify with that for sure. I do want to touch on something deeper, though, based off of this specific conversation, is that the miscarriage that you experienced and that loss. I have no doubt that there are many people who are going to listen to this and feel validation from hearing from someone else what that experience may have been like for them. How do you feel it impacted your relationship to navigate that difficult time?
It was really difficult. So I had waited that week to tell Andrew, and then we had talked all night and finally gone to bed and then woke up and we were smitten. We were just like, okay, this is happening. This is what we're doing. We got into the planning process, whatever. And it was mid that day that I miscarried. I mean, nobody prepares you for it. I don't even know how to there's nowhere to place blame here other than I didn't know that miscarriage was that prevalent and that normal and that, that a lot of people go through that. And so in my mind, it wasn't something that ever crossed my mind as a possibility of happening. So when it happened that day, I was very, very confused. And so I had to figure out what I did wrong. And in my mind, it was I too stressed about the fear of having a kid? And did I abuse my body too much from gymnastics? And I had suffered from eating disorders for years. And I had, abused diet pills. And in my head, it was like all of these things that I failed at already and being a mother that like caused it. And I was just in such a sad place and I didn't know how to voice any of that to him. We hadn't even like fully unpacked all of that baggage that I had gone through. I didn't even know how to explain a lot of that. But one of the greatest gifts that I had in that miscarriage, we were in LA at the time. I didn't even have an OBGYN in LA, but we got connected with one who was a gift. And I can hear his voice in my head, and I still hear it to this day. But I walked in, and we went through all the testing and everything. I remember he brought us into his office, and he said, if you hear anything, I need you to look me in the eyes and hear this. It's nothing that you did. You did not cause this. It is nothing you did wrong. And I just remember bawling. And I remember him saying again, he's like, do you hear me? Do I need to say this again? And I just remember him saying that. And I don't know if even to this day, I believe it. I don't know why I'm getting emotional. I haven't gotten emotional about this in a long time. I went through many other miscarriages in between children, but I don't know what it was about the first one. I remember the due date. I remember when it happened. And it was just really sad. And it caused a lot of tension between us. Only in the sense of I didn't know how to voice that I needed help. And I didn't know how to voice this idea and this feeling that I felt like I lost a baby. And explaining that to a spouse who hasn't held a baby and hasn't had a baby in their stomach and like all these things was very hard. I had felt so much grief and I didn't know how to share it.
We haven't talked about this in a while. Like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of emotional thinking about this. So much has changed. It's almost like reflecting back on a whole different side of life. And there's so much has happened. The doctor that we're talking about has since passed away. And like, just you recounting that moment, I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
But it's also, this is now 8 or 9 years ago. And over the season, we talked about this a lot. What is so confusing, I think, caused some of the tension is like all those things she just voiced. I don't think you did voice those back then or could, of all the personal blame you're thinking it was all your fault. And then there's also like this new identity that you almost assume, like I was talking about, like, okay, all right, we're doing the parenting thing and I'm a dad, I'm playing dad mode now. And then that doesn't pan out like you think it does. But your identity doesn't really shift back once you take that leap. So it's just all very confusing. And Shawn was ready to try for another kid right after that. And I was like still trying to make sure that we had processed through it. So it was just, there was a lot of dynamics going on.
We were butting heads for a while after the miscarriage of what do we do now? Does light just go back to looking exactly like it did? In my mind, I didn't know how to process that because in my mind, I felt like a mom. And I was like, I want to be a mom. And so we were just having heavy conversations frequently about, well, when? In 2 months and 3 months and I was wanting to make sense of it.
And I think what you're talking about is so common when you experience a collective joint grief like that. And again, we can't anticipate grief every time. And then to go through that, I don't think there, again, is a playbook or a rule book around how you're supposed to navigate that other than to just navigate it. And I think you both spoke beautifully to that and how difficult it was. And I really appreciate you both being so vulnerable.
Sometimes it is easier to talk to a stranger about these complicated things you're going through.
100%.
So thank you.
100%. Want to get to something, I hope, a little bit more lighthearted, but doesn't have to be. And talking about becoming parents. How has your communication style changed?
The way it changed the most after our first kid was just going from individuals that led very separate lives who were married before we had a kid. And then all of a sudden we had a kid and it was like, oh, we actually have to talk through everything. We actually have to be completely unified. And it was a huge transition for us.
Girl, it still is.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean? We
Yeah.
are learning so
Well, I
much.
mean, I think we both agree with the concept of like we have to work on communication. I don't think we knew we needed to work on it until after we had our first kid.
When we first got married, it's a fun, hey, I'm now roommates with my best friend, and
Yeah.
we're married and we get to do stuff together. And then you have a kid and you become like an amoeba. Like you really
Yeah.
become a group that anytime one person pushes out or does their own thing, it like has an effect on the rest of the group. Like you're tied together in a totally different way. I think it took us honestly probably like a year into having our second child before we really formalized our strategy on how we were going to make it through this in a together fashion and like not have this power struggle. And I feel like it's pretty common to hear how important communication is in marriage, and you hear communication is key. I did not necessarily grow up with that as an example. My parents had this amazing love. My dad was totally like this rogue individualist, and he was definitely the ask for forgiveness and not permission type. That's kind of my natural demeanor too. And I'm like, yeah, I'm opportunistic. Let's do this. I want to say yes. I'm excited about everything. It's so much fun. And that really had an erosive effect on Shawn, I think, and was tough. Still is. Your habits get exposed in a really unique way with parenting, and your stylistic differences. And then you're like, okay, I didn't know you were so into organic food, and now that's all you want to feed our baby. And now you're like super upset that I'm not. Whatever. There's a bajillion different cases like that. But our strategy has been to like really be highly structured and rigid with our communication. So we have a lot of check-in points, which, it's not whimsically romantic or like really fun. But for us, I think it's been a really important step to take just to make sure that we are being seen, that we do give space for our friendship and our romance to flourish. And so every night after we put the kids back, we have what we call bev time, and we'll like have little 5-minute check-ins of like, hey, let's debrief today, or do we need to talk any logistics for tomorrow? Weekly on Sunday nights, we do like a kind of a planning session and like a broader zoom out. Anytime there's like patterns that we see that are frustrating within each other, it's like we give those a month to kind of say, oh, is this still persistent? Are they still doing this? And if so, then you can say, yeah, this has been a pattern I've seen over the last month. Let's talk about it, as opposed to just speaking the moment of like, you did that and it's so annoying. It's like, you got to make it through some of those small emotional annoyances.
It's easy to like automatically get on the same page when you're just two. And it changes the entire, again, you said this earlier, dynamic. It is always dynamic. And it's a lot. It's a lot to navigate and manage all at once. And I think you both spoke beautifully to that. Going to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit about postpartum. A lot changes between from pregnancy to giving birth to not just our body, but our psychological and mental and emotional selves. So how did you both navigate that time for healing for you, Shawn?
We had a wonderful system in place. Andrew came up with these like non-negotiable things that I would have to do every day, as far as like getting sunlight. We'd have to watch a funny movie, and it was really, really sweet. I had very typical challenges with both the first and second, as far as like figuring out new identity and trying to figure out the new rhythm of life, all of that. I went into our third pregnancy and our third baby thinking it was just like every other. It was truly the first time I think I ever really understood postpartum depression. Our third baby is the greatest blessing, and he's amazing, but he was just so different than the other two. He wasn't eating, he wasn't sleeping, he was a colicky baby. There were like so many things that I had never dealt with. And I didn't realize as I was taking care of him that I was losing control of myself. And I remember having like a really like out of body experience. And I remember telling this to Andrew after I had gotten through it. But I said, I didn't know I don't even remember how I worded it, but I could feel myself drowning, but I didn't know how to help or ask for help for myself because I knew it was my job to figure out how to help my baby first.
Mm.
And it was like by the time I could help our baby, I had lost control to where I didn't even know how to work myself back to normal with where I was. It feels like such a blur, and it's probably a postpartum that I remember the least, which is odd, and it makes me feel so many emotions now. I feel guilty that I didn't enjoy it as much as the others, and I wish I remembered it more, and it caused so much tension between us because I didn't know how to ask for help, and I didn't even know it was wrong.
Were there moments where you ever felt misunderstood
Oh, the whole time.
the whole time?
I knew I was supposed to, like, be loving the baby phase, but there wasn't a single point that I felt I could be happy about.
Mm.
Whereas, like, with our infant, I felt so troubled and concerned and obsessed with this idea of I had to help him and I had to get life figured out for him. We had to
Mm.
figure out the feeding situation. We had to figure out the
Yeah.
sleeping situation. I knew with different opinions that what people were saying wasn't right, and, like, it was a mom gut thing of, like, we just have to figure it out, and I just had to keep going. But in obsessing so much over the baby, I wasn't able to go play with my big kids, and I was missing them, and I felt like I was being a bad mom to them.
Mm.
And then if I ever had that time from the baby, I'd go play with the kids, but then I'd be like, "Nah, I'm not being a good wife." And I felt
Mm.
so completely misunderstood in every category.
Mm.
And then it would be like, "Why aren't you asking for help?" And it's like, I don't know where to start.
Andrew, hearing this now, what are your thoughts? What are your reactions to that?
This is not really how the communication or conversation went in the moment,
Sure.
and it's disorienting, it's discouraging, it's you know, you start questioning as a partner, you're like, okay, I I just don't know what to do. What can I do? And now I think just I probably didn't prioritize the softness or just the hey, let me sit here and listen as well as I
Mm.
could have because I still was like, okay, well, let's go do this thing. Let's go get you sunlight or whatever because I'm trying to find a solution. And anyway,
I feel like with the third one, when things started to feel new and not okay, you defaulted to, well, this is what I needed to do to make sure she's fine. And I remember even having the conversations later of we knew something was wrong, but neither of us could articulate it. And I'll
Mm.
never forget at one point we had gotten to a point where it had gotten just not normal. I don't want to say it got bad, but like we were disconnected and I was cold and I was distant and I remember you sat me down and you said, "We're gonna go to therapy." My very first reaction was I was so emotionless. Like
Mm.
I couldn't feel anything.
Mm.
I didn't have the energy to argue. I didn't have the energy to even talk about how I felt. And I was just kind of like, okay, great. And it was the very first thing that started healing me, it was the greatest gift you ever gave to us.
it's really I got to a point where it's hard when someone's going through that something like that who's close in your life. You don't understand at all. That's when I realized at some point I was literally completely out of my depth and we needed professional perspective on this.
Mhm. That feeling of helplessness that you're describing is sometimes as awful as it feels in the moment. I think it's also sometimes the best gift that we can get is that sometimes we have to feel helpless to finally ask for help.
Mm.
And we don't always know when it's going to happen, and then suddenly that light bulb is like, I feel so helpless, I need help. There's so much there that you've shared with me, and so you've looked back on a lot of really core memories and difficult experiences that you've had over the last 10 plus years. Do you feel like therapy or any other tools helped with that?
Massively, yes,
Mm.
as health.
Massively, yes. Our very first glimpse into the gift of therapy was when we did premarital counseling.
Mm.
It's a requirement in Andrew's family, which was such a blessing, but you had to do premarital counseling before you got married.
Mhm.
And we became like best friends with our premarital counselor. He was amazing.
Mm.
And after we got married, we started learning that we had this tendency to only go to counseling or therapy when it got bad.
Mm.
And we've now started just setting goals of doing it proactively and just for maintenance.
It helps so much anytime you speak or write something, you're like putting it out onto the table and in a way that allows you to be like this third party audience to it. And then and that's what a therapist does so well, is kind of like pulling it out, and then it makes it feel way less personal.
Is there any advice that you would give to other couples who may be struggling in their relationships after becoming parents?
Right around the time we had our first kid, we started doing weekly date nights that were like mandatory. And every Thursday night now it's Wednesdays. 5 p.m. goes. We ask for help, which I think is another big one. Like please allow room for others, allow room for the village to help raise the child, whether it be friends or family. We have someone come watch the kids, and we'll go out, and some nights we say 2 words to each other and sit there in silence because we're mad or annoyed or whatever. And then other nights it's like such a refreshing, we'll look forward to it all week. And that's kind of the season we're in now, where it's like, what, date night is our favorite part of the week.
Yeah, it's actually something I practice too in my own family, but then also as a therapist, I will give this as homework too, is carve out, schedule that time, make it impossible, immovable. So hard last question. Any moments of doubt that came up for either of you after the kids and during those difficult moments?
I never had doubt in us,
Mhm.
and I never had doubt in Andrew,
Mm,
but I always doubt myself
mm,
because I am a perfectionist and I want to succeed and I want to be the best at what I do. And so my brain and my doubt goes to, am I suited to do this? Am I the best mom for my children? Am I the best wife for my husband? It's doubt in myself.
mm. Those moments of self-doubt are somehow extrapolated and amplified when we go through these significant life changes. And I think you spoke to that really beautifully. And to your point, it's like it may be a crossing thought, but it's never something it's not an option. It's not on the table.
I am grateful that we have had this all-in mentality, I think. And when we stood at the altar and said I do, it was like this, okay, like we don't know what we don't know, and there will be things that come up that we don't know, and some of those will really hurt. But we are going to go down this journey together. We have just never, we've never been to the point where we've needed to take the first step in that unwinding, and I'm grateful for that. But it's an adventure to take the highs and lows, and then you look back on it 10 years. We're on our 10th anniversary of marriage now, and it's like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful mosaic of a life that we've built together. And I've been front row seat to Shawn's life as her witness to her life, and like that is what a responsibility, what an honor to see her at her best and at her worst, and then to hold her hand through it all.
We made a commitment to each other
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago. And then life got really, really messy. We've gone through a lot of really hard things. We have very complicated lives. But rather than ever question the commitment, it was always who do we need to go find? What do we need to do to help preserve it?
Yeah. I really do love how vulnerable and open you've both been with me today and in answering these questions, which I know can sometimes be so tough. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sreela. I'm down to make this a 7-hour podcast if we need.
Yes.
I would. Okay. Let me tell you, I love talking to you guys. I would do this for 7 hours, except I think my boss might come after me. This is an ad by BetterHelp. In this episode, we're talking about what happens to a marriage when a child enters the picture, and how the joy of becoming parents can coincide with some of the most challenging moments a couple can face. These moments deserve to be talked about, not pushed aside. And having the right support can make all the difference. Therapy can help you navigate conversations like these, especially when you're trying to communicate across differences without losing connection. BetterHelp makes it easy to get the support you deserve. Visit betterhelp.com/mindifwetalk for 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/mindifwetalk. Shawn and Andrew have a way of speaking about and to one another with so much tenderness and love, and I think that's what allows them to go to the hard places together. At the end of the day, they truly function as a team. Now, to help me unpack things further, I sat down with Sonni Williams, a licensed therapist with BetterHelp. We talked about different postpartum mood disorders, what to keep an eye out for in your partner, and how to get to know each other at 3 a.m. before the baby even arrives. Remember, if you want to write into our show, check out BetterHelp's Instagram stories for the latest prompt. You may hear your question in a future episode. All right, let's get into it. Hey, Sonni, nice to have you back again.
Glad to be here with you.
So the first question I want to really lead into here has to do with one of the most maybe bittersweet stories that Shawn shared was when there was an unplanned pregnancy. It wasn't even on the radar for them. And, what do you think it is about that sort of news that causes someone to hesitate even when they're in a committed relationship or any type of relationship?
It's a life-changing event for better or for worse, right? The bittersweet part that you talked about. And it's important to take that time to just be like, okay, this is scary. Do I want this? Do I not? And really sit with it. And sometimes saying that quiet part out loud of, are we ready for this? Will this hurt my career? Will this change us and our dynamic? And being okay to have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. How do you think a person could decide to make sacrifices about specific aspects of their lives? I'm going to have to put this on hold for myself until my partner has to put this on hold for me. How does one navigate that?
Well, when you're doing it for yourself and when you're doing it with a partner, I feel like it looks a little bit different. So I'll start with your partner first when you're talking about those sacrifices. I always love what our former First Lady Michelle Obama said about having to have that moment where it was like, oh, wow, for these, 8 to 10 years, it was me lifting the load. It was me doing these things, being the primary parent, for the betterment or the greater good of the relationship, of the family, right? And I feel like when those aspects come into play, it's important to remember, okay, we are a team. So eventually my time will also come. And knowing that your partner has your back of that give and take and being willing to sacrifice as well with you and not having it to be all on you, right?
Yeah.
And then from the individual aspect, I think it's very important to almost handle yourself with kid gloves. We do such a good job of caring for the baby and the baby's needs that we forget, okay, what do I need in this moment? And if I am sacrificing right now for my baby, how can I get back to me? Letting yourself understand that it's temporary and it's never supposed to be just this full-on sacrifice of where you have nothing left at the end of the day, because that baby, hopefully, willingly will grow up, be an adult in this world. And when they are, you don't want to be sitting there left with nothing because all you did was sacrifice without remembering to come back to yourself.
If you're in a relationship and you're confronting something like an unplanned pregnancy, do you feel like therapy could be helpful?
Always. If you are a willing participant in the process, yes. And I speak a lot with parents about doing interpersonal therapy, and that focuses on transitions. Becoming a parent is a huge transition, and that therapy in particular focuses on who you were in the present, the grieving process of grieving who you were, and also learning how to be this new version of yourself. What does that look like? And really having your partner walk alongside you with that, because you're becoming new people together. You're entering a new hood together, entering the parenthood together. So therapy can be an excellent tool to kind of help you get prepared for that new chapter or the transitions that you're experiencing through the pregnancy.
Yeah, because it's not cookie cutter. No, your journey is yours. Your partnership with your partner is yours, and it's very tailored, individualized, subjective to the individual and individuals that are going through it, because no one time is the same.
No.
I want to talk a little bit about the miscarriage. One of the things that, and frankly, it really touched me and it really got to me too, is when Shawn was processing that miscarriage, and what that was like. And oftentimes, when we go through that type of a loss, it is very easy for someone to turn that blame inward.
Yeah, I find that people that are experiencing miscarriage, they want to try to attach a reason, even though in most cases, vast cases, it's something that is completely out of your control.
Right.
It's something that could not have been prevented, but it's human nature to want to attach meaning to something and be like, okay, well, maybe it's because I did this, or maybe it's because I did that. And I feel like that can be very harmful to you because you're already going to have to experience this immense grief and this transitional period. And your body is still very hormonal, as if the pregnancy, is still moving along. And so that's uncharted territory that you're dealing with. And then the added pressure of saying, okay, well, was this my fault? What could I have done differently?
What happens, or how can somebody approach it if one partner is ready, again, to try, but the other partner isn't?
With that, you can't force it. And I know for the person that may be ready, that's the hard part to hear. Because it's like, what do you mean you're not ready? Like, we just lost this part of our family. Don't you want to grow our family? Those types of hard conversations that come up. But for the other person, they could have fear of another miscarriage. They could have a fear of, okay, well, what happens if maybe I lose you next time? Like, the fear is real. And you have to be able to talk to your partner and say, okay, well, what is the root cause of this? Like, why are you ready? Why am I not ready? And really have those conversations. And that's another point where a therapist could help you kind of meet in the middle, facilitate those tough conversations, and really get you to a starting point, right? Maybe not a resolution, but a starting point of how do we move forward with this?
Right. Because even if you have the conversation, it's no guarantee that you'll end up on the same page, but
Exactly.
having that clarity around what is this really about for each of us, and how do we get through this, not over it. I want to talk a little bit about postpartum. We talk about it, but we don't talk about it enough. And I really would, I love that we got some traction on this for the greater good around like managing postpartum. Like, how can you prepare? What are some of the things that you simply can't prepare for?
Yes. And perinatal mental health, you're speaking my language.
I know I am.
It is my jam. So one thing that I do want to clear up, a lot of people are familiar with postpartum depression, right? That's the big one that comes out there. But there's a whole umbrella of terms, and it's called PMADs, right? It's perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. That is the scope of it. So we have the postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, and, in some severe and rare cases, we have postpartum psychosis. You can not necessarily avoid it, right? But you can prepare better. So you can have a support system in place. That is key. And the second piece that really helps kind of stave off some of these things is a knowing and an awareness. Like, if you are already susceptible to certain mental health concerns, say you already have anxiety, you may be more likely to have postpartum anxiety, and kind of looking at certain markers and predictors, talking to your doctors, talking to your team of support of saying, hey, this is what I'm noticing. This is what I have a little fear around. What should I be on the lookout for? What sort of things should I be paying attention to? And that support system is key, not going into it alone.
With any postpartum experience, there's already a sense of isolation. Having gone through my own 2 experiences as well, Sonni, like you, I was underprepared. And then I felt very isolated at the same time, because it was like, I don't want to give voice to this, because if I do, then I'm failing. But knowing what to look out for is, I think, crucial. You have the specialty here, so I'm going to lean on you. How can we look out for those signs, subtle, not so subtle, and then how can we support our partners?
One of the main things to look out for is it the baby blues or is it a PMAD, right? And so one of the key things with that is timing of it. If it's lasting more than 2 weeks, that's not baby blues. Then we need to start looking at some other things. So are you extremely weepy? Tearfulness? Are you having some scary thoughts? And if you're having scary thoughts, knowing that that is normal, right? That is a normal part of postpartum depression and anxiety, is some of those scary thoughts. And a lot of times moms or birthing people, they don't want to say it out loud because they're like, something must be wrong with me. Or people might think that I want to harm my baby. And that's not the case. But that is a marker that I might need to reach out for help. I might need to say this part out loud and try to get some help. If you start to notice with your partner, if they are withdrawing into themselves a lot, if you're noticing that it's very much them and baby, they don't want you to touch the baby. They don't want you to help with the baby. No, you can't change the baby's diaper. The baby can't be out of their sight. Those are clear signs of postpartum anxiety. Like they don't want anything to do with you helping with the baby. It's just all them and the baby. With postpartum OCD, you might notice that every so often they have to swaddle the baby just so. It has to be just this way. I have to feed in this order. I have to nurse in this order. And it becomes very strict to the point where if they make a small mistake or if something is out of order, that is their day. They're done. And with the main one, with the postpartum depression, the waves of emotions that are coming on more frequently than not, you notice that they're not so much taking care of themselves, or the baby is very well kept, but you notice that they may not be showering, they may not be sleeping, they may just be almost a shell of themselves. Don't just let that go by the side. Like ask them, what can I do to help? What can I take off of your plate? Or, I like to say, just be proactive. We're not blind. We can see the things that need to be done, do the things, help the mom, and just being there for them. With postpartum psychosis, that one is very clear signs. They don't always speak up because they have a lot of intrusive thoughts that are going on. However, what you may notice is hallucinations or delusions. Very severe confusion and thought processes. Their speech may be very varied and what they're saying is not making any sense. Those types of signs do require immediate medical attention.
Now, I'm so glad you touched on that too, Sonni. I've had my shared experience in a clinical setting with that, and it is a very scary experience. And I don't think it should be one that we don't talk about because not very many people know about it. And when they do encounter it, they're at a loss. So the more education we can get out there, the better. Sometimes I think partners are hesitant and they don't know how to find the right words or what to say and how to say it. So do you have any tips or tricks that can be helpful for the partners who are listening to this in helping support their partner who has just had a baby?
The main thing is hopefully if you've reached this point, you have a certain knowing of your partner and you know how to approach them, right? Some people need something very direct, very clear. They don't need you to beat around the bush, while other people may need you to handle them a bit more gently. So there's no one size fits all for this one, but I would say open the conversation just very generally. I've noticed this, whatever the case may be. I would like to offer you some support, but I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Would it be helpful if I, and then fill in the blank? Don't leave it so open-ended for them to just say, oh, I'm fine. It's fine. I got it. Offer something that you've noticed. I've noticed that, at times you're not letting the baby out of your sight. Is there something that I can help with that? Would it be helpful if I sat with you and the baby and maybe I held the baby while you did X, Y, and Z, whatever the case may be? Like call name to it, but say it in a way as to where you're not going to put them into defense. You're not going to offend them in a way, because a lot of times mothers or the birthing person feel like it's their job to take care of the baby, right? It's my job. I have to do all of the things, but caring for themselves is also part of caring for the child. And sometimes they don't realize that piece of it.
Right. And, again, to be fair, even if there isn't any diagnosable postpartum occurring for a new mother, there's still like a sensitivity that they're experiencing as a mother, where they already are tired, exhausted, sleep deprived. Their body has been through war, and then on top of that, if they feel like they don't know how to ask for help, having somebody to offer solutions, to call it a name can be incredibly supportive and helpful, 100%. One of the things I think couples underestimate is the impact of becoming parents on the relationship. Here we are happily married or happily partnered, and suddenly it's like, yes, let's have a family. What do you think is, top whatever, however many come to mind, what do you think it is that couples underestimate most about having a child and how it'll impact their relationship?
Many things, but
Same.
that also goes to the preparation piece, right?
Mm,
There's all these birthing classes, all these things to prepare for you to get the baby here.
right.
But there's very little on, okay, what do I do once I have the baby here? And even less about, okay, what do I do to sustain my relationship with this new
Yes.
baby?
Mm,
And so there has to be that piece of who do we want to be with this new addition, with this baby in our life? What does it look like? How do we connect? And we have to be intentional about it, which is easier said than done, especially in those first few months. But it's so important to protect that time, whatever that time looks like, even if it's 15, 30 minutes of, okay, we're going to watch our show. We're going to put the baby down for a nap or tummy time or play, whatever it may be. The baby will be somewhere safe and you and I are going to connect. We're going to have that time. If you are able to have a village, you are going to utilize that village so that you can still date your partner, so that you can still communicate with your partner, and that you can still remember why we went on this journey together. Because it's very easy with a newborn to become ships in the night and become very good at co-parenting this new baby, but you become disconnected as partners.
Yeah. And I think that's the piece. And it's so easy. It just happens when you see couples that are new parents. Any particular patterns that you see pop up for them around when they are struggling the most?
Yes, everything becomes hyper-focused on the child. Every conversation, every point of connection is that child. But did you notice that your partner changed their hair? Or did you notice they've been struggling at work? Those little things, the things that you used to love learning about your partner, become distant knowledge when it should be secondhand. You forget to have those check-ins with your partner.
Somebody once said to me years ago, try to touch, quote unquote, your partner said X number of times a day. Hey, don't forget to eat your lunch text. Or taking that 2 seconds to say, hey, you're home. That's a touch. Every little bit, that connection, making that connection, because that opens it up. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it real. And I've never forgotten that tip. Do you think there are aspects of communication that will need to shift in a partnership once kids are introduced into the fold?
Almost every aspect will need to change. I always tell people, find 1 to 2 things that you just want to protect. Like, this is your line in the sand, but you need to be a little bit loose with everything else and finding a new normal. The biggest thing I find with parents, new parents, is the intimacy issue or the intimacy gap. And I love that it's becoming trendy now to schedule joy. People say, scheduling sex is not sexy and they don't want to put it on the calendar. And so now I say, we're scheduling joy. It sounds a whole lot more fun, right?
I love that. That's fun.
You have to be intentional about those things. You have to put it on your calendar. You're not going to plan for your PTO and then be like, never mind, I don't want to go on vacation.
Right.
So that's how intentional you need to be about your partnership, your intimacy, your relationship. It does not matter if it's been a long day. It does not matter if the kids have been crying, if you're overstimulated. If you have planned it out, you protect that time fiercely and you make it happen.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Schedule your joy. Yeah. To your point, we wouldn't cancel our PTO. No. What I'm also hearing when you say that is when that becomes the pattern, it starts to feel like you're getting taken for granted.
Yeah.
And then that builds up a resentment in the relationship. And that can lead to deeper issues within the partnership that maybe didn't exist before, which leads me to my next question, which is a couple comes to one of us and says, we don't feel like ourselves anymore. What would be the first thing that you would want to look for? And how would you encourage them to shift that narrative for themselves?
If you're coming to me and we don't feel like us anymore, I would ask, when did it start to feel different? I would want to pinpoint what was the moment? Did you even notice the moment when it happened? And then what can we do now? Because we're here now. And understanding that we may not be able to get back to us, but who do we want to be? Who do we want to be in this partnership? Who do we want to be moving forward? You can always revisit your vows. You can always revisit the conversation of what can I promise you?
I love what you just said, Sonni, because I think it's really a lot more profound than people think, to say something like, I don't know that I can show up for you like that anymore, but how can I show up for you now?
Yes.
Because it's acknowledging the past and honoring it and the person and relationship you have had, but also acknowledging that it has changed. It may not be able to go back to that. How do you know when it's a tough season or a rough season in a relationship that we will power through, just like a tough winter, versus there may not be much more they can give or the relationship is breaking down? Like, how do you tell the difference?
That goes back to the different timelines when we were talking about with grief. When it comes to a partnership, people can be experiencing the same relationship very differently. And for one person, they could still have a lot left to give, a lot left fight. And for the other person, they could just be completely shut down. Like, I've gone as far as I can go.
Sure.
So it would take talking to both of the people individually, because we know sometimes when it's a group setting, the honesty does not always show up. Sometimes it's hard to say the not so nice thing, the thing of where we're truly at or where you feel like you're at. And so I would always encourage, if I meet with both individuals and I feel like there is something there, something that they still want to fight for, even if it's something very small, then it's always worth fighting for. It's always worth saying, okay, I can give it a little bit more, but maybe I have to approach it differently. But when they can't even give me a small piece of something, either in regards to how they love their partner or how they are still in the relationship, then it's time to have a different type of conversation.
Who's going to keep me warm at night? It could be that small. Or who's going to help me with this? It could be that small. And I'm not trying to make it sound transactional, yet at the same time, sometimes it is those little things in our partnerships that make us realize like how meaningful they have become to us in our life.
When it comes to relationship training that we go through, one of the main predictors of divorce, right? They say is if you don't give your partner a bid. And that's when they're just they could be saying, oh, the weather is nice, the sky is blue, it's going to be hot today. And they don't turn towards you and they don't acknowledge you. That is one of the biggest predictors. And to me, that's a small thing that could be very telling if things start to get rough. Did you see that video I sent you on Instagram? And it's nothing. Then it's kind of like, okay, this is where we're at.
Yep. When a couple is planning to or trying to have a baby or start their family, what are some exercises or rituals or tools, whatever comes to mind for you, that you can recommend to help with that, like aspect of preparation?
Yes, there's a few things, but the top ones that come to mind for sure is, how do we want to parent? How are we going to be with the child? Because again, that goes back to what we were talking about, what we saw with our parents or whoever raised us. Those things come with us into parenthood, and not enough parents talk about, okay, once this child gets here, how will we parent them? How will we get them into adulthood? And that's the other part. Do we want to have a baby or do we want to build a family? Because when you think about it, the baby season is very short.
Very.
In the scope of what it is you're doing when you're bringing life into this world. So those are two main things. And then once it's happened, once baby is on the way, one activity that I always recommend and I assign as homework is called Who Are We at 3 a.m. And that is when I have the parents set their phones, their alarm clocks, whatever it may be, for 3 a.m. or whatever time the mommy to be or birthing person to be is getting up to use the bathroom, because that happens near the end. Yes. And the phone or alarm has to be somewhere far away, as to where you have to get up, you have to go find it, and you have to do an activity. And the activity has to last no less than 20 minutes, because that goes back to that preparation piece of, I didn't know the sleep deprivation was going to be so bad. I didn't know there were going to be so many sleepless nights. And I have them do it for about a week straight. They notice, oh, we were changing out the dishes and we started getting snappy at each other. Or, you know, you start to see those things, because if you see it early and you see it often, you can course correct. You don't want to wait until the baby is here to figure out, how do we do this? How do we communicate when we haven't slept and, you know, we're tired and exhausted? Yeah.
I love that exercise. You're strengthening your resilience as a couple in so many different ways, right? You're really seeing that investment. So I really appreciate you sharing your expertise today, Sonni, because again, I wish I'd had you before I had my kids at this point, but now we're too late. We're too far gone at this point. We're too late. I'm gone. Hopefully our listeners get so much from this. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Sreela. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I want to give a big thank you to BetterHelp for their passion for this project and for giving us a platform to champion the well-being in all of us. Mind If We Talk is produced by Acast Creative Studios in collaboration with BetterHelp and hosted by me, Sreela Roy-Greene. If you like what you just heard, drop us a review in Spotify or Apple Podcasts and share the episode with your friends. Maybe one of our topics will help someone in your life. And remember, your happiness matters. Mind If We Talk is intended for entertainment and education, not for mental health diagnosis or medical advice.